David Anthony McGreavy was born in Southport, Lancashire, England in 1951. He was the second of 6 children born to parents Thomas and Bal McGreavy. Thomas McGreavy was a sergeant in the British Army, and this inspired David to join the Royal Navy in 1967, but he was later dismissed in 1971 for starting a fire. Shortly after David's dismissal, his fiancée left him and he spiralled into depression and began heavily drinking. This caused his mom and dad to kick him out of the family home, and David would find himself completely isolated and completely alone. In 1972, David moved in with his friend Clive Ralph and Clive's wife Dorothy Alsey. Clive and Dorothy had 2 small children at the time and had been married for 4 years when Alsey, at age 16, had fallen pregnant with her eldest child. Dorothy, otherwise known as Alsey Ralph, was also pregnant at the time that David moved in. McGreavy began working in a factory, paying £6 a week in rent to the young couple. There were rumours that him and Alsey had an affair, but she's denied this several years later. Alsey began working as a barmaid after the birth of her 3rd child. During this time, McGreavy began to babysit for the young couple. Alsey recalls that David acted like a father figure to all of her children. Little did they know, the events that were to follow would change their lives forever. On the evening of April 13th, 1973, McGreavy had enjoyed a drink at his local pub, the Vauxhall pub on the Astwood Road in Worcester. There had been a small altercation between him and another gentleman after McGreavy had put his cigarette out in his friend's drink. Following this altercation, Clive came and picked up David and brought him back home. He proceeded to ask him to watch his 3 young children while he went and picked up his wife Alsey from the pub that she worked at as a barmaid. Clive would often pick up Alsey at the end of a shift, sometimes a little bit earlier so that he could enjoy a pint or 2 before she finished work. At some point between 10:15 p.m. and 11:15 p.m. on Friday the 13th of April, McGreavy became infuriated with the 3 young children, and he would go on to commit a heinous crime. Clive and Alsey Ralph's 3 young children were 9-month-old Samantha Jane, 2-year-old Dawn Maria, and 4-year-old Paul Kenneth. When they had been left with McGreavy that night of Friday the 13th of April, 1973, he had gone on to kill all of them in the most horrific way, in something that would shock the city of Worcester, the country of the UK, and the whole world in its entirety. Samantha Jane, the youngest of the 3 children, was the first victim at the hands of David McGreavy. David had later explained that Samantha had been crying for her bottle and he'd become infuriated and killed her with blunt force, causing her to die from a skull fracture. Dawn Maria, the second youngest of the 3 children, had been killed by having her throat heinously slit by David McGreavy before he finally moved on to the oldest of the 3 children. 4-year-old Paul Kenneth, the oldest of 3 children, was killed by strangulation. But as if the death of these 3 innocent children was not horrific enough already, their ordeal, even in death, was still not over. Following the 3 killings, David would make his way down the basement of the family home on Gilham Street in Worcester to retrieve a pickaxe, which he used to further mutilate the 3 young children's bodies. After using the pickaxe to mutilate the 3 young children, David McGreavy then proceeded to impale the 3 small children on a neighbour's iron fence. Following the killings of the 3 innocent children, McGreavy proceeded to leave the Ralphs family home. Elsie and Clive returned to see blood covering their 2-bedroom home and McGreavy missing. They immediately proceeded to call the police. The police arrived quickly to Gilham Street, Worcester, and unfortunately for PC Bob Rees, he was the one that shone his torch in the gardens and discovered the 3 bodies of the young children impaled on the iron fence. McGreavy was arrested only 2 hours later on Lansdowne Road, which is a road parallel to Gilham Street in Worcester. When McGreavy was first arrested, he completely denied what he had done, saying the words, quote, "What's this all about?" However, several hours later, after being taken to the police station, he did admit to his crimes, responding, quote, "It was me, but it wasn't me." David McGreavy then proceeded to explain his crimes in graphic detail. Warning: the following details are not to be taken lightly. Please proceed with caution. McGreavy explained that the first child he killed was Samantha. Samantha was only 9 months old. McGreavy explained that he placed his hand over her mouth because she wouldn't stop crying. He then proceeded to strangle her and then walk to the bathroom, grab a razor blade and slit her throat. He then inflicted a compound fracture on her skull. McGreavy then targets Dawn, who was only 2 years old. He described how he strangled Dawn and proceeded to cut her throat with a razor. McGreavy then moves on to his final victim, Paul. Paul was only 4 years old, and McGreavy explained in detail how he used curtain wire to strangle him before making his way down to the family basement to retrieve a pickaxe so he could further mutilate the 3 innocent children's bodies. And yet, even after degrading these innocent children's lives, taking them in the most heinous ways, he still wasn't finished. After killing the children and mutilating their bodies with the head of the pickaxe, he proceeded to impale them on the neighbour's iron fence. McGreavy never gave a real reason why he killed the children. There's been much speculation by lots of different types of psychologists, but nobody has ever been able to determine the real reason why McGreavy did what he did on that fateful night. On the 28th of June, 1973, David Anthony McGreavy appeared in court and pleaded guilty to the murders of Paul, Dawn and Samantha. The hearing lasted only 8 minutes. There was no diminished responsibility, no defence plea, and no motive given. Paul was given multiple life sentences, with a minimum of 20 years to serve.